I'll start the broadcast. All right, let's get the videos going so that everyone can see them as they arrive.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, what an inspiring video. Oh.
It's a great example of customer service being at the heart of everything. She does sales, marketing, operations, customer support, and even accounting all by herself. And all that is focused on me, the customer. When businesses grow, more employees come on board. And guess what? Putting the customer first ends up being an empty slogan. That's the problem we set out to solve with the new Zoho Desk, putting customer service at the heart of a company. That's what we truly wanted to build. Zoho Desk will make customers more empowered, agents more productive, and managers more impactful. And by the way, it was built right here in a town called Tenkasi in the heart of rural India. Who said you need to be in Silicon Valley to build world-class products?
Perfect. All right, guys. I know Chelsea has some few words to say. I'm just going to wait to see how many people are. We've got about 40 people, so I think there's still a few more people that are logging in. Chelsea, I'll let you say a few words after I've just gone through some house rules. So if you can just bear with me, please. Okay, so while the people are joining us, quickly going to just go through some house rules and just show you guys how the system works. We're using Zoho Backstage integrated with Zoho Showtime. So the platform you're on now is Showtime, but the ticket issuing and the agenda and the website was done by Backstage. So those are two of our applications that we're working on here today. All right, so welcome. It's Building Your Career with Zoho. Quickly, just a few house rules. We're going to be recording the seminar, so it will be available afterwards. Then I will announce the winner of the voucher, the 10,000 Rand voucher. I'll announce that at the end during our Q&A session. Okay, and so just as you're using the system, you'll see on the right-hand side, it will show you where the presenter is in their presentation. Then you'll have on the left-hand side, you've got your chat tab. You can click on that, and that's where you can just talk, communicate with us. If you have specific questions that you want to ask, there's a separate tab for that, the questions tab over there. While I'm explaining this, you guys are welcome to push in the chat, just say hello in the chat. So yeah, next we've got the questions tab. So if you ask specific questions, you can put them in there, and then we can project them onto the screen so everyone can see your question. Then if there are any handouts, I don't believe there are any handouts for this event today, but we've also got the handout section, and then notes. If you guys want to make notes, you can make notes. You can have them sent to you via email, and don't worry, even if the event closes, you'll get your notes on email. Or if we exit the event at the end, you'll get your notes. Right, these are some of the social media handles that we've got for Zoho for the Middle East and Africa, MIA. So go ahead, and if you can follow us and hashtag and tag us, we really appreciate it. Okay, cool. So now some words from Chelsea.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this exciting event, Building Your Career with Zoho. We're all very excited to have you here today and hope you're all enjoying the good weather. So for those of you who attended Break the Rules, I'm sure you will recognize and remember the name of the company and recall their amazing presentation. So today we're going to go into a little more detail and find out how you as a developer can benefit from becoming a certified Zoho developer. So you can take a look at the freelancing capabilities Zoho Tech Suite can offer you, along with a whole range of other exciting topics. So the name may not be familiar to you yet, but that's because Zoho has just built an office in Cape Town, and we are lucky enough to be joining them on the start of what they're up to. And I'm sure this is going to be a very successful business venture in South Africa. So without further ado, can I please invite the speaker for today, Andrew Bourne, to the stage. Thank you so much for giving this presentation for us today.
Perfect. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you so much. All right, so let's move on. I'm going to do a quick overview. Don't worry, it's not going to be as long as my presentation at Break the Rules. Just for some of the attendees that are joining us that weren't at Break the Rules, we'll quickly just go through who Zoho is. Zoho has been around for more than 25 years. We've built more than 50 business applications. We're in more than 190 countries around the world. We've got more than 60 million users. I think we're close on 70, even maybe over 70 million users that trust and use our technology. And we've got more than 9,000 employees. We're actually around 10,000 employees globally. And what Zoho has done is it's built a connected ecosystem of these business applications. All right, we've got a global footprint. As Chelsea said, our office in Cape Town will be open as of next month. And so that's quite an exciting thing for Zoho. And we're also looking at establishing offices in Kenya and in Nigeria on the Africa continent. We've got headquarters in America, as well as international headquarters in Chennai, India. All right, so Zoho over the years have built these world-class applications. We've got years of experience, a proven track record, and we are continuously improving the applications that we have created. This is a visual representation of the connected ecosystem. Zoho's apps integrate easily with each other. They are the most comprehensive integrations. And I mean, I can just give you one example. From the CRM, you can export into a Zoho Writer document, which is like Word. And then you can send that Zoho Writer document for digital signature with Zoho Sign. So it's incredible the integrations that you can build. And we'll also hear about it in the interview with one of our Zoho developers. Zoho integrates with third-party solutions. So you do have Zoho Marketplace where there's pre-built integrations. And then you've got the REST API that you can also build integrations with. And then Zoho Flow, which is a cross-platform workflow app like Zapier. We have the highest level of security. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. These are just some of our global clients, some of our local clients. We've got Quicket, RSA Web, Standard Bank, MTN. So you'll hear more about it. You know, Netflix uses our CRM system. We've also got the likes of Tesla that uses Zoho Creator, and I think Tejas is going to take you through that in his presentation. And then what Zoho has to offer, we have a huge bundle of more than 40 applications that connect together called Zoho One. And then we've also got smaller bundles like CRM Plus, Workplace, Finance Plus, Marketing Plus, IT Management, People Plus, and I think the other one is, I'm not too sure. I think we've got another, yeah, there are some other packages that you can look on our website. And then also you can pick individual applications that you can purchase. All right, career opportunities. We have Zoho consulting partners, we have affiliate partners, we have developer partners, and we also have freelance developers. So the developer platform is also available where you can create custom applications on Zoho Creator. You can also build vertical CRMs. So you can get more information about that on the developer platform, but I think Tejas is also going to talk about that. Zoho customers, there's a huge demand. And I can tell you now, just before this presentation, someone again phoned me and said, I want to hire someone that knows about Zoho's apps. So there's huge demand from our customers to hire people that are knowledgeable and experienced in Zoho's applications. Training and certification. Okay, so we're going to do a poll, and you just have to say yes if you're keen to do the training that we'll offer for free to the UCT Dev Society. And then, and we'll take it from there. Let's quickly do the poll question because I know we want to get into the interview and Tejas's presentation. So let's just see here. We've got, would you like to enroll? Okay, so the poll should have popped up. You guys welcome to just cast your votes. You should see the results popping up as well there. Okay, perfect. So we'll contact you guys and we'll enroll you in that training program. I see there's another poll here. I'm going to leave it maybe for the end. Maybe one of our other presenters is actually doing it. Okay, so then next up, internships. I know you guys have all asked me about internships. You guys are welcome to apply for internships with Zoho. You're welcome to either click on that link or you can scan the QR code. It'll take you through to our career page where you can sign up and put your CVs in there and your skill sets and submit. I'll just give you a moment to do that if you need to use the QR code scanner. I'm just going to check in the chat. Is everyone all good? You guys able to hear me clearly? Maybe just pop it in the chat there. Hey, anyone, you guys able to hear me clearly? I'm just looking in the chat to see. Someone just type yes. Okay, maybe I'm not able to access the chats there. All right, so we've got an interview with our Zoho developer. I'm going to quickly go ahead and play that for you guys. All right, so hello, Lee. Thank you for joining me this evening. I know you are a very busy man. And what is it? It'll be like 8:30 in the evening to get you on air. But yeah, thank you for taking the time. And so I'd like to just ask you a few questions.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me, Andrew. Yeah, anytime. Well, not anytime, but yeah, I'll make time for you.
Perfect. And then maybe I should just give you a little bit of an introduction as to who you are. So Lee is one of the directors of Fuse IT, and they are a Zoho partner. And Lee himself is a very, very experienced Zoho developer.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the best way of explaining who you are.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Perfect. And then, so Lee, how did you start, and how did you get to know about Zoho technology?
Right. So, I mean, by trade, I'm a full stack web developer. I've been doing that for like the past, well, up to now, 20 years, essentially. And then I had a friend who was utilizing Zoho CRM. He's in the Forex industry. And he wanted to build a portal, essentially, for his customers and his agents and consultants that could be able to see their transactions. And I don't think this was available in Zoho at the time, and the customer portal stuff. And I'm talking about 2016 now. And so he asked me if I could do it for him. And yeah, I did it. And his Zoho partner at the time, or still is his Zoho partner, saw this, and because I had actually worked in conjunction with him, and they said to me that Zoho is growing at a fast rate in South Africa. There's a need for someone with my skills, and what would I think about doing this more of this kind of work for them. So I said, yeah, I mean, I'm open to any opportunities. And I mean, I didn't know much about Zoho at that time, but I said, yeah, let's do it. And so he introduced me to any of his customers that needed any advanced configurations or, lots of development. And yeah, and since then, we've just basically grown. I then decided that maybe I should become a partner myself, and that's what I did probably like 3 years ago now, and yeah, that's where we are now today.
Okay, perfect. And let's talk about this demand, because I mean, as they said, Zoho was rapidly growing, but now even more so with the pandemic. So
Yeah.
how has your experience been with the demand for Zoho's technology?
Well, first of all, I would say that Zoho One for me was a game changer for the industry as a whole. To have, I think at the time was 48. I don't know how much it is now, Andrew. A number of apps.
Yeah, it's over 45. Yeah.
Yeah. To have all these apps for my new license fee was just like customers like, why? Where do I sign up? And the ability to have these apps talk to each other. You basically, as Zoho actually tags themselves, it's an operating system for your business at a low cost price. Long gone are the days where people had to have all these separate systems from separate vendors, and then having to have the and the skills from all these different vendors and being able to then, collaborate together and combine the systems to talk, and then one system updates and then, their version, and then there's a whole, the other system needs to get involved again, so gone are those days where you can just have this one Zoho integrated operating system essentially. So, and then also, as you said, now with COVID, the demand for anything cloud-based just increased, even, just, I can't even, 1,000 times. So, being able to do, for example, people used to run, in South Africa, I'm talking about, Pesto, and the in-house, and nobody could be able to access it online. For example, you have to be in the office. Customers that I've converted to Zoho, they had bespoke CRM systems where you actually have to be in the office. Whereas now nobody's in the office, so that the demand for online systems has increased. So yeah, I mean, that is the way the world's going.
Yeah, and I know you're also a very busy man. You've got people from all over the world that are now, needing your skill set. So
Yeah.
whereabouts and who have you been doing work for across the globe?
Yeah, I've got a couple in the US, like Minneapolis, and in I can't remember the other names for the places, but and then most of my client overseas are in the UK. There's it's quite a bit there in the UK. I've had one or two like in Spain, with Singapore and like Australia, but I suppose the focus is more like the US at the moment, the UK and a bit more in the US at the moment.
Okay, perfect. And then what would your advice be to someone who wants to become like a specialist in Zoho's technology? What sort of skill set or what sort of courses or what should they focus on to become very specialized in, customizing the whole system?
Yeah, for me, this is an intangible, is your, for anything development wise or IT, it can get frustrating. So my main thing ever is always don't give up, first of all. That's an intangible that you just, I can't emphasize more in my career. I'm not talking about just Zoho, I'm talking about my whole career now. Don't give up when you think that's not possible. Take a break from what you're doing, go away, maybe have a nap, go to sleep, and the solution will come to you. You'll do research, and you'll be able to come up with a solution. The other thing is also the ability to understand your customers' requirements. That is, that sort of overflows into also knowing what is capable. What is Zoho? I'm talking about Zoho now. What you're capable of off the shelf. What processes is available. What you can do to integrate with other systems, and combine those two. When you're in a meeting with a client, as the client's actually speaking to you and giving you their requirements, you should be able to, in your mind, already have the solution, and you can actually guide them more. Once this comes with experience. It's not something you obviously have right up front, but that's something you could build on, and then also the other thing is also just think outside of the box. So Zoho is obviously a great application. It integrates off the shelf. It will do a lot of integrations, but sometimes, not all businesses work the same. There's a need to think outside of the box. So I'll give you an example. My first client with this partner that got me involved with Zoho, they actually they had a bespoke CRM system, and then they would export data from that CRM into, and they had 10 pastel organizations for counting. So they wanted to migrate to Zoho. So Zoho one allows you to integrate with one CRM and one book organization. But this client had 10 organizations. So what do we do? I mean, you can integrate, but with the first organization, it's a two-way sync. Whereas with the other organizations, it will be one-way sync. So what could we do? So I had to go away. I mean, and think about that. And so eventually, I thought, I mean, there's a language that we utilize in Zoho. It's called Deluge. It's loosely based on JavaScript, so it's very easy to pick up once if you know JavaScript. Syntax might be different, but the logic with any language, it's just the logic you need. I mean, the logic is always the same. It's just the syntax you need to learn. So it's coming back to that. The situation was that I decided then to completely disable the syncing that was built into Zoho. And then I wrote in Deluge the ability to communicate from the one CRM to the different organizations based on the configurations that I had to make in CRM, so that customer A could belong to only org B, but customer B could belong to org C and D. So they, those kind of things you can't do in the off-the-shelf integration in Zoho. So yeah, so I mean, and that was our first client. They still using it today. They still actually are one of our biggest clients. They've actually upgraded to 13 organizations now, and they're busy with another organization. But the way we wrote it, it's just a seamless integration, basically. And then the other thing that I've also picked up is there's a big need for SQL. So this is where Zoho Analytics comes in. People, customers love their, visualizations of their data and stuff like that. So I would say that is a core skill to get into Zoho is SQL, language. Being able to do complex SQL queries, subqueries, built-in functions and those kind of stuff. And I'll come back to the same customer is that, so with Zoho Books, you get a standard P&L, which is our income statement, and a standard balance sheet. But this client wanted to be able to, because they had 10 organizations, they wanted a consolidated view across all the organizations. They also wanted to be able, because there's intercompany transactions between these companies, you won't be able to see that in the standard report in Books. So we had to compile this complex SQL, which runs over quite a few views, and integrate it into a report, so they can actually go in and see for the intercompany transactions. They could see it. Also, the other thing that the income statement in Zoho doesn't show you is that you can't do budgets. It doesn't show you on the income statement what your budgets are, your forecast, your last year's figures. So you can't do comparisons, year-to-date figures and those kinds of stuff. Whereas we were able to do that with SQL, because we knew SQL. And yeah, I mean that reports are running like clockwork, basically. So yeah, just to come back, just to SQL is a big thing. JavaScript Deluge is what the other things, and then just the ability to understand your customers' requirements.
No, definitely. And one thing you did say I think is very important is, and it does come with experience, but understanding which apps are best to use. You might want to use Zoho Flow for an integration.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or you want to build your own custom integration like you did and switch off the standardized integration.
Yeah.
But as you said again, all businesses are unique. You might find that a business operates in a certain way, and you'll need to then customize Zoho further than what its stock standard integrations will take.
Yeah. I mean, I had one today where Zoho Forms seamlessly integrates into CRM, right? But the the customer wanted to do validation based on data that's already in the CRM. So like you can't submit from an email address that's not existing, that, it will be invalid data basically.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, CRM would seamlessly integrate, but it can't do those sort of complex integrations. So we have to turn to a creator form where we can then write code and then go and say, can you just check if this is a valid email address? And, so yeah, so there is, as you say, various ways to do it. And you just need to understand which apps work with best for those kind of things.
Yes, no, definitely. And then I also wanted to ask you, what would your kind of advice be to someone who is now skilled? They are certified in Zoho. How can they, market themselves and get their skill set out there so they can get noticed?
Well, as you know, I'm not the best salesman, Andrew, but I actually, what helped me dramatically was your advice was, do videos. Videos, where you can, because customers out there, or they don't know what if you don't show them what you can do, and what's the best way to show them what you can do is to do videos. You can show them your understanding. You can show the technical side, like there might be not I won't say a loophole, or not something though that is not available right now, and that was actually something. One of my videos that got me a lot of my business was this is something in CRM called a subform. And now subforms weren't, up to a couple of months ago, were not syncing to analytics. So we weren't able to report on any of that data that was in that subform. So that was a big hole for my customers. And so what I did was I actually wrote an API integration from the subform to analytics. Excuse me, and all the data would just be there in real time. So what I did was I did a video of it, and because as it was such a big deal for a lot of customers around the world, everybody saw the video and they all just contacted me. And the thing is, when they contact you, they would contact you they were initially about that thing that they were contacting you about, but then they realized that obviously your way around the system. You're able to do other kinds of things, and it just grows from there. Some of the people I was able to help was other partners, and then they want me to help all the other customers that they need help with. So so that was the big thing that sort of elevated me, was your advice to do those videos. And and from that,
they were great.
Yeah, thanks for
I also noticed you built the Zoho CRM integration with Zoho WorkDrive before it actually was available on the marketplace.
Yeah. Again, that wasn't, as you said, wasn't available, and that's also the other thing. I mean, I think JavaScript. Your guys that you're going to be talking to, they would. I think that's also a big thing to know is JavaScript, right? So, because JavaScript's going to eventually run the world, according to some people. So what that allowed me to was to utilize the JavaScript SDK of Zoho, and basically create a widget within the CRM and be able to talk to the various work drives, to WorkDrive by an API. And the other thing I want to talk about is Zoho has the ability to integrate with any other vendor software out there that offers an API. It just so because some customers, as you say, they would just use Zoho, but some of them might be some legacy stuff, or they want to still integrate with other vendors. That can all be done in Zoho, as whenever the needs to push to and pull from this various systems, just utilizing APIs. It's easier than most people would think, actually.
No, okay, awesome, man. And Lee, lastly, where do you think, what's the future now of Zoho? Now we know the likes of Tesla that use Zoho Creator and other companies like MTN and Standard Bank. Where do you see the future, you know?
Oh, that's a difficult question. But yeah, from what I've heard in South Africa, it's growing, massively. Specifically, for the price point and what it offers. So I think it's just gonna flourish. And it's also the other app that we haven't spoken about, but it's obviously part of. I have mentioned it briefly. Is Creator, doing those. We've been able to build an app within a couple of days. It's just gonna, it's just people can't fathom, they just think apps take months and months and costs of this, but with Zoho Creator we can easily build it. So yeah, I think there would be a big demand for Zoho Creator, and Zoho CRM. There's a lot, because the one thing I want to say about CRM is also you don't have to think of it as a CRM, right? You can think of it outside the box as you can bespoke it to any sort of business requirement. It doesn't just because it's got CRM, you don't have to utilize it for the CRM capabilities. You can configure it to, as to any sort of industry and type, basically, and it will meet your requirements.
Yeah, with the the custom modules and so forth.
Yep.
No, definitely. Okay, well, great, Lee. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No worries.
Okay, great. So actually just want to thank Lee. He doesn't like to be on camera, so that was a first for him. Just so for more information about him, Lee actually lives in Fishhook in Cape Town, and he does this work for all these companies internationally. So it's a really good story, and he's so inundated with work that he literally can't take on anymore. So that's Lee Bailey, and you guys can search him. His company is called Fuse IT. I think the website is fuseit.net. All right, so next we've got Tejas is going to present. Let's just give him access. Let me quickly just do that. All right, Tejas, are you able to? Great, he is on his way. Tejas from our US office, and he's going to tell you more about Zoho Creator and the developer console.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Andrew. You can hear me now? I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, cool. Just making sure. All right. So like Andrew said, my name is Tejas. I'm from the US office. I've been with Zoho for about 10 years now, based out of Austin, Texas. And I work on the creator team and a lot of the developer products that Zoho puts out. And so I'm going to go over a little bit about some of the things that Lee touched on in terms of development areas for the Zoho ecosystem. And then I'll touch a little bit more about market opportunities that Andrew had mentioned earlier, but I'll just recap some of those. But before I do that real quick, I'm going to throw one more poll out there for you guys. And it's going to be just kind of a feeler for what's everyone's kind of level of technical proficiency. So it should be out there now. Just so I know, are we talking mostly beginners getting started, people who have a decent amount of coding experience already? And then based on that, I can explain things, I guess, one way or the other to make more sense. And so, so far it seems like a fairly technical crowd, I would say. Most people seem to have some level of programming experience, which should make most things pretty easier. But for those that are not very technical at all, I don't think you're going to find too much trouble here either. And at the end, we'll have time for question and answer as well if you have questions about some features and functionality stuff or some broader picture things. So it was all show it to everybody and let everybody know where everybody else is. And so you can kind of see that, you know, a good 2/3 is fairly experienced, has some programming experience to some extent. And then, you know, the bottom quarter is probably maybe not as technical, but clearly you're here. And so you're probably wanting to get a little bit more technical. And I think a lot of what we have in this presentation is going to be stuff that you find pretty useful. And so let's dive right in here. So like I mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about low code in general, maybe explain a little bit about the landscape and then talk a little bit about what we do with that at Zoho and how you can build things on the Creator platform that we build. And then I'll touch on our developer program and certifications and stuff like that to actually get a little bit more familiar with the product. So starting out, the idea of low code in general is really a sense of being able to abstract a lot of the development process in order to speed up and make developers or users, people of any skill level really, a lot more effective and efficient with their time. And so generally when you are building an application from scratch, as some of you indicated that you're able to do, you know, you might have to spin up a database, maybe you have to spin up even bare metal, run an operating system on it, put some, write it in some programming languages connected to, like I mentioned, databases. You might have to do some kind of scaling, some load balancing. Then you got to build out a UI. Then maybe you have to build out a mobile application in Swift or for Android. And so there's a lot of different steps that are involved in building, you know, a multi-device application. And a lot of times that infrastructure, that backend, can be very time consuming and honestly not the most productive part of the developer experience. So ultimately, kind of your front end development and your business logic are the most important parts that any user is really going to get value from. The back end stuff like scaling and security are kind of problems that, you know, are important, but not really the best use of a developer's time in terms of being able to provide value for their end product. And so in the low code world, there's a couple different vendors out there that do a couple different things. And so I've got a little chart here that I made. And at the bottom, you can see application complexity. And so that means just how complex an app is, obviously, right? So some apps can be, you know, very simple. Maybe we're just building some sort of, you know, small database application, maybe a contact management solution, maybe something to track, you know, rentals or inventory or something like that. And then it can get a lot more complicated into things like ERP and finance, and you're storing customer information or calculating commissions. And as that complexity increases, you know, the amount of skill and time that's required to build something is variable. And so there's a lot of vendors that offer, you know, a high level of customization options that take a decent amount of skill and time to master, but you can build apps for all levels of complexity. These are generally, if you're familiar with some vendors, I'll throw some names out there for you. These are things maybe like an OutSystems or a Mendix or an Appian, a few companies in the low-code space that primarily target larger companies and primarily have a pretty steep learning curve in order to build applications. And then on the other end of the spectrum, this is really where probably a lot of new and maybe more exciting companies that you may hear of are in this space down here. And this is generally maybe companies like Airtable, maybe companies like Bubble, maybe companies like I think Google has something called AppSheet. And so these are basically apps that are kind of glorified spreadsheet replacements. So most people, when they have some business process or something that they're trying to store and organize data for, it's built around some sort of Excel spreadsheet. And that's kind of the de facto way most people learn how to organize data. They probably create some relationships or lookup fields inside of Excel. So the basic idea of data structure, but just the look and feel of Excel is a little, you know, restrictive. And so maybe we want to slap a better UI on it. And that's where a lot of these emerging players are. But ultimately, you can see that there's a really big gap in the middle for when you hit a certain level with an Excel replacement, you can only go so far in terms of application complexity. And so this orange box kind of talks a little bit more about hitting both ends of the spectrum. The simple apps that you can spin up in 5, 10, 20 minutes, like Lee had mentioned earlier, or complicated apps that take maybe weeks or months or even never really get finished being built and are constantly evolving. but a single platform that kind of handles the small to large use cases makes things a lot easier. So it's not like you hit a glass ceiling building an app in a simple platform and then have to go rebuild that entire app in a more complex or more powerful platform, because the simple one, can't do the amount of customization work that you need to do. So largely what ends up happening in a lot of large organizations and small organizations the same way is you go with this multi-vendor approach. You find something that does the small apps well, you find something that does the big apps well, and you basically just have two different platforms you're building things on, and you're hoping that it works. But ultimately for companies and for people, this becomes a really big problem because one, changing platforms is not easy. Every low-code platform out there is extremely proprietary. So there's no there's no interoperability really. There's APIs and integrations that can be done to transfer data between the two. But if I want to leave the Zoho ecosystem and go to a different low-code platform, there's no way to really transfer your application logic and your design. So there's a lot of what we call lock-in, which has its pros and cons. Pros from a vendor perspective like us, it's great because customers, once they start building on our platform, they don't really ever leave. But it's bad from a customer perspective because if you don't like the vendor you're working with, leaving can be kind of a nightmare. And so that's why the ability to have one vendor that does all sorts of application development is extremely important, because you don't really have to leave because you won't really hit any kind of glass ceilings with the applications that you're building on the simpler end or on the more complicated end. And so when it comes to low code with Zoho, ultimately our entire goal, and for most low code platforms in general, is really developer productivity for all skill levels. So that's kind of why I asked that poll question a little bit earlier, just to say that even if you're not very technical at all, or all you really know so far is Excel and maybe some basic HTML, that's no big deal. The whole point of low code platforms is to basically upskill somebody. And so even if you're a professional developer and have built your own websites and your own mobile apps, there's still ways to increase your productivity if we can take away some of the development baggage like backend infrastructure and stuff like that, on the more, I would say, advanced end of the spectrum. Then on the basic end, if you're just not very technical at all and you don't know how to build a mobile app, now with a few clicks of your mouse and maybe a few lines of code at max, you can probably build an entire custom app on your own that you normally wouldn't be able to do. And so generally speaking, there's kind of four main low-code kind of platform components, I would say, that are pretty important to build anything substantial. And I'll touch on each one of these here in a little bit. But ultimately, I'll start at the bottom and move up. And so our serverless platform, if you're familiar with something like AWS or Azure, we basically have an infrastructure that we're able to allow people to build on, and they can spin up their own databases, create their own UIs, execute their own functions, a lot more for the complicated, heavy lifting, but it's really the foundation that everything's kind of built on. And then ultimately, you have integration workflows, because almost any application you create for business use cases or even personal, rarely is your data in a silo. Really, you want that data to be connected to some other source. So like Lee was talking about earlier, when you have two applications, either if they're in the Zoho world or one Zoho application and one third-party app, or even just two third-party apps on their own, building integrations is important because you need that data transferring, and so you can have visibility to some other system in one place and not have to click around every single time. Then you have the actual custom application you're building. So this is more like the user interface for the web and for the mobile, and kind of your data structures and all that. And then at the very top of the level, you have some level of business intelligence. So you need to be able to analyze the data that's going in. You have an application, it has a bunch of information about maybe orders or customers or something, but reporting is one thing, but business intelligence is kind of the next level. So some of you may be familiar with tools like Tableau or Power BI. Those are really just very powerful analytics engines that can analyze the data, create predictions, create trends, visualize information across many different data sources. And basically between these four different components is how you can really build powerful applications and touch on every aspect of a business need in a single place. And so Andrew mentioned a little earlier about companies that use us. We've got about 10,000 orgs that use the Creator platform specifically, a lot more that use multiple Zoho applications and stuff like that. But sometimes people like to see that big companies use our products. It makes them feel a little bit more confident that it's not just some small companies that are using it. So companies of all sizes, we have single user entrepreneurs just starting out and running their entire business on the platform maybe, or you can have large, Fortune 500 companies in the US or international companies that use it as well. So it's really all across the board. It could be individual teams, it could be organization wide. It really varies. But let's get to the actual meat of the presentation. So let's talk about actual application building, right? So when we look at an application that you're using, whether it's what we look on the screen or that Backstage app that we used earlier, or even more apps that you probably use on a day-to-day basis, maybe Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Ultimately, every app is made up of these 5 basic components. And so I'll start at the first level, which is basically going to be forms. And so forms is a very structured way of collecting and storing information. Now, forms can take all sorts of different shapes and forms, no pun intended, but ultimately, oftentimes you're using a form without even knowing that you're using a form. So what I mean by that is when you enter, and you're creating a new tweet on Twitter and you enter something in that box, ultimately that's kind of a form. When you create a new post on Instagram and you upload a picture, you add a caption, you tag a location, that's a form. That's a form with 3 fields: an image field, probably a caption field, and then also another field for location as well. And those 3 are stored in some massive database that's rendered some way, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But forms are just a way to structurally organize and collect information. And there's a couple different types of forms you can have as well. You can just create forms from scratch. We make a bunch of different templates available if you want to just take a template and customize it or just use it out off the shelf. And then there's integration forms, which basically let you connect to multiple different services and make an application, a custom application in Creator that automatically creates records in maybe some other business application down the line. And so when it comes to forms, and using the Instagram examples, you need to have forms that collect a lot of different. So technical people, you'll understand that when you're storing information in a database, it can be stored in a lot of different ways, but forms generally have a lot more properties to them. So every single type of information you enter, there might be some unique values to it, right? When you enter an address field, maybe you want to have the address auto-populate to complete, so make sure that the address you're entering is a valid mailing address, for example. Alternatively, maybe you have something like a picture field, and you want someone to be able to use their iPhone camera and take a picture right away and have that uploaded. Instead of picking from the gallery, or you want to require them to pick it from their photo gallery from their phone. So each one of these different field types has different attributes for them, or what we call properties, basically. And so, like I mentioned, for the address field, you can select and unselect maybe certain countries you want to have, or maybe pick things off of a map and just drag and drop a pin. Or for phone numbers, maybe you want to restrict certain countries, or make sure that that data is encrypted or stored securely because it's personal information. But ultimately what we have is, for this little thing to load here. So we've got this, well, that didn't work. I haven't seen that bad boy before. 1 second. All right, well, that didn't work. So I'll show you that later, I guess, maybe. And then the next step after creating forms, using all the different form types and attributes that you select, is visualizing it. And so visualizing it usually happens through a report or a chart. So I'll go back to the Instagram example. Your feed is a massive report, right? It's just a list of all the different posts that were submitted through forms, and then maybe algorithmically displayed based on your user preferences. Same way your Twitter timeline is a list of a bunch of different tweets that were filled out through a form and then visualized in some way, shape, or form. All that information is visualized, and you need to be able to visualize it in a lot of different ways. And so we make a couple of pre-built custom reports that people can easily just point, click, configure, and create. Maybe something like a map report, maybe something like a calendar, if you're using scheduling and stuff like that. And so let's hope this one works. Yeah. So you can visualize these different cards in a couple of different ways. We have a simple drag and drop builder that lets you, generate these little cards based on any information you have stored. And so here you can see, it's just a couple point and clicks of an interface, and then it automatically creates these little cards, that make it pretty visible for accessing that information. It's kind of like a business card view, essentially. Then you have other simple things like a Kanban view for maybe changing statuses for things. Like I mentioned before, you may have a map view and you want to visualize appointments and different types of what do you call icons based on maybe different statuses, appointments that have been completed versus things that are still pending, things like that. And then you can have a timeline view, if you want to just see what's somebody's schedule for resource allocation, for example, that can be done that way. But one of the more important things, or I guess more impressive things maybe even, is a lot of times when you have a lot of information in an application, being able to find and drill down into the information is extremely important and sometimes very difficult to do. And oftentimes in reporting, you have to actually enter and create your report with all the different constraints and maybe XY axis configurations, by hand, and then you can generate the report and then you'll see what it looks like. But we've also got this thing called our Zia Smart Builder that will let you type in, some line of text. It'll automatically generate a report. Then you can go and tweak it over time through that text and regenerate it. So this way you can really, in a really live, I would say, live environment, you're able to quickly manipulate that data, drill into it if you want to. It'll also generate SQL queries on the right-hand side automatically for you, so you don't have to actually even generate anything, and keeps it all pretty simple. So you're able to really manipulate that data, visualize how you want it to, and work with it very dynamically and typing in kind of plain English instead of having to configure it through a bunch of point-and-click options. That's pretty standard. Then we have something called pages. And so pages is really where your design work kind of comes in. And this is where most people will spend most of their time in applications. And so what I mean by that is you generally have a form or a report, but you generally don't want to look at just a form or just a report. A form might be a part of a bigger page design, a report or a visualization might be part of some bigger page design. And so instead of looking at that individual component by itself, we may want to combine multiple components in a single interface. And so we've got this basically like a page builder where you can drag and drop different components, like maybe these kind of panels or maybe some charts or individual forms, and you drag and drop them. You can kind of pick and choose from some pre-made templates, customize all the different colors and options. And every single one of these options, like the green background, the icon, the text, the size, all that can be customized to input whatever information you want to, whether it's static text or maybe you can pull information from the application itself, like maybe the count of records. So here it says open tickets today. It might be, how many tickets have an open status, for example, in this application. So I can do a count, put a little filter on there for status equals open, and that number is going to be dynamically generated every single time. And then for some of the more power users, there's a whole basically what we call ZML, which is our Zoho markup language, that's able to customize this entire card going through the code layer. So everything that's done that I've shown so far, from forms, reports, whatever, there's always a point and click option for I would say non-technical people or even people just getting started, or sometimes it's just quicker to point and click things and type it out in code. But then as you get to more and more customization or more and more complex situations, you might need to go in there and tweak some code here and there. Maybe you want to change the color to something specifically, or you want to adjust the width and the height of a box to match something specifically. You can go in here and tweak those things a lot more granularly than you would be able to when you're kind of only bound by point and click. So we always like to provide a design option and a code option for almost everything that's in the product, because that's really how I would say non-technical people can see, how their point and click actions affect the code in real time, and then also for power users to be able to manipulate the code as they wish and not really have to maybe spend time pointing and clicking if they know exactly what they want to change and can change it in maybe a couple lines or snippets of text. And so let's hope this video works. I'm going to be upset if it doesn't. Well, I don't really know why that's not working. It was working before. I've got some videos. I'll pop back into them later. The last piece, or not the last piece, but one of the kind of underlying engines for the whole thing is going to be workflows. And so workflows means anytime some action happens in the application, you might need to execute some sort of workflow action for that purpose, right? So maybe, for example, if you have orders, someone enters a new order, maybe an email needs to go out to somebody, maybe a push notification needs to go to somebody. In the Instagram example, you make a post and maybe your close friends get a notification for it. So we keep a list of your close friends in a forum. We keep a list of your posts, and whenever a new post gets created, we send push notifications out to certain people. All that can be done simply through creating workflows here. And so with workflows, there's a couple of different types, I would say. Generally, you can have it, on form events, which means whenever you submit a record or you enter a piece of information, and then you can be on a schedule. So maybe like every week, every month, you want to send like an update or a digest about something. And then also there's like approval processes, payment actions, and functions that can be executed automatically as well. So just different types of ways that workflows can be created. It's going to really suck because the video is probably not going to work, knowing my luck. Yeah, I will figure out why those videos aren't working, and we'll come back to it. But when you create a bunch of workflows, it can be very difficult to navigate them all, especially if you're heavily code-based. And so there's kind of like a form workflow section where you can see and filter all the different workflows you have created based on, you can see on the right-hand side of the screen here, when the form loads, we want to automatically fill some customer information. Whenever someone clicks submit, maybe we want to update the time for the pickup order. And whenever it's successfully submitted, we'll notify somebody, add some unassigned action, and do certain things. And so it's just a way to really visualize all the different workflow actions that are happening in a single place that can really help drive your logic creation, because you can see it all uniformly. Now, a lot of these workflows you can create through point and click actions, like sending a notification email. You'll type in an email it goes to, you'll type the content of the email, and it goes out. But for more complicated things, like maybe updating inventory of something, or maybe calculating a shipping time, or calculating the distance for a delivery driver, there might be some ways where some code needs to work. And so Lee kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but we've created this language called Deluge. And Deluge is a Zoho language we created years and years ago that basically lets you very easily manipulate data within an application and use that in order to execute custom workflows. And so here you can see that this is, technically a 25-line script, but really a lot less than that, with some comments here and there. And even if you are not very technical, you can read this and kind of get a sense for what's going on. You can see that there's something called product purchased, and for every product, we're calculating the quantity, or we're getting the unit price, we're calculating a total amount, we're doing something with the inventory, and then we're sending an email here. It's fairly legible to a non-technical person. And then for technical people, like Lee mentioned as well, heavily based on kind of a JavaScript syntax, so a few tweaks here and there, but ultimately, if you're familiar with other programming languages, it's very simple and quick to pick up. But this is really a lot of the glue for creating very complicated workflows in the creator world or in the Zoho world at large. Almost any product in Zoho can execute these kinds of deluge functions and have some sort of complicated workflow triggered off. And I'm pretty sure I have another video here, which is not going to work. Yep. I'm pretty sure we'll share the slides later, so the videos will come through in that regard. And then the last piece here is really mobile at the end. And mobile kind of encompasses all the different actions I talked about before: your forms, your reports, your pages, your workflows. All those are replicated from desktop to mobile. But you also want mobile specific or mobile optimized features and functionality as well. And so let's take something as very simple as, maybe some swipe actions on a record. And so here I've got some requests for some cars that maybe are getting repaired, and I can simply configure on the left-hand side through some point and click configurations what happens whenever someone swipes left, what happens whenever someone swipes right, what happens when you long press. All those different actions can be easily configured with no coding involved. And then there's other like mobile level customizations like maps, right? So on desktop, your map might be a little bit more static. We can get your computer location and visualize things around you. But on your phone, maybe you want to get directions. And so you can see when I click on a location, there's an option for getting directions right inside there. And that's kind of the mobile component of it. And really the mobile wraps up kind of, like I mentioned before, the all-encompassment of the other five or other four major components: forms, workflows, reports, and pages that are there to build everything for you. So I'll tell you a little bit about a couple customers real quick, and then I'll sling it back to, or I'll tell you about a couple customers, and then I'll tell you about the program and the training stuff, and then we'll sling it back to Andrew and let everybody kind of go on their way. And so MTN is I guess, a fairly large telco out in Africa, Middle East region. And what these guys ended up doing is they had different procurement processes for every single country that they operated in. And so, the telco operates in multiple countries. Every country has its own process for, purchasing certain items within the workplace. And that was going through, arguably, I guess, 20 different departments. And each one had their own little, I would say, process, really. Some were using spreadsheets, some were using email, some are using some automation, some are not. And they really had no visibility into kind of overall how is everything working. And so they wanted to create a bunch of automated workflows and dashboards to be able to visualize how that procurement process kind of works across the board. And so this application is used by something like 50 or 100 different finance people across the 15 different countries that they operate in, so they get visibility. And then it's also taken up to the central headquarters for global visibility into a lot of their purchasing process from different departments. And so ultimately, kind of, it just increases productivity. Everybody has a single way of doing things, removes the silos because all the data is feeding back into a single system. And then ultimately the central finance team or even the country specific finance teams can really make decisions because they can see everything in one place right away and aren't waiting on maybe some manual data entry processes to store and organize and generate reports and all that kind of stuff. Another pretty big example I would say is Tesla. These guys, they make electric cars apparently, I guess, maybe if you heard of them. But basically what they do is in their manufacturing process, every step of the manufacturing process is very siloed based on basically, I would say, a component owner. And so, one person's in charge of the doors, one person's in charge of the steering wheel, one person's in charge of the seats. And each one has their own method of quality control and automation and kind of, when something is defective, going through the repair process, all that kind of stuff. And so on the factory floor, basically, they have a very mobile, I would say mobile heavy implementation where everyone on the floor in the manufacturing lines has these phones that can easily scan QR codes or NFC tags, and they'll basically mark something as, pass, fail, essentially, right? And if something gets marked as failed, then it'll go through, certain troubleshooting steps for certain items. Each department or component owner can create their own troubleshooting steps for determining how bad of a fail is it, right? For example, if the chair is, welded incorrectly and it won't screw in properly, that could be a pretty big fail that needs to go and get thrown out and replaced with a different chair. If the chair has some kind of maybe scratch in there, maybe it'll go to some fabric department and they'll patch it up and it won't actually get replaced, right? So each one has its own unique kind of ways of troubleshooting, but ultimately at the central level for manufacturing overall, they want to see a centralized dashboard as well of all of the different issues. If certain components are having more issues than others, if there's certain times of day or certain workers that are causing these issues, or people identifying things properly or not. There's a lot of different moving pieces, obviously, in this kind of thing. But ultimately, you're getting a bunch of items passed in front of you on an assembly line, and you need to be able to quickly identify that item, make sure it's that unique, part number, serial number, say if it's good or bad, go through troubleshooting, all within a matter of, 30 seconds per item, maybe a minute tops per item. And so creating a very quick mobile app that's, optimized, really big buttons, easy to use, stuff like that makes it very easy for them to work on things. And so these guys were on a different low-code platform called QuickBase earlier. They ended up moving over to us because they felt it wasn't scaling properly and didn't have the mobile features and functionalities that they were looking for. But ultimately, this app is used by something like well over 1,000 different manufacturing workers across different plants in the States and overseas as well. So pretty big implementation, I would say, and kind of a nifty use case. So to kind of sum things up a little bit, I feel like I touched on this, but I'll just reemphasize real quick in summary. We kind of have 3 different levels of users that correlate to maybe 3 different types of products. We have our citizen developers, who are generally our less technical savvy people, people who maybe are familiar with HTML, CSS, and Excel formulas to an extent, but not really much more than that. You have business developers who understand some programming to an extent, but aren't really full stack developers. And then you generally have IT teams who do full stack development for internal applications generally for their team. And for each one of them, there's different tools that enable their productivity. The no and low code tools are primarily point and click configuration driven, where non-technical people can really build things out very quickly, and it'll take care of everything for them. And then for more, I would say, more experienced developers who understand programming a lot more, they would take advantage of some of the serverless and low-code offerings that enable them to use a point-and-click configuration, but also be able to let them deploy code, really have a granular configuration over databases and file stores, and different security methods that they want to implement using either the serverless platform or the low-code platform, more coding-oriented. So that's kind of a grand landscape of maybe just large organization or even small organization, really any organization development kind of spectrum. Everyone's got a place in it. Ultimately, the goal for a lot of these low code things is you really want applications to be built by the users or the employees that are closest to the problem. What happens often, I'm sure probably at your school, maybe even there's some app that does something and it probably sucks. And that reason for that is whoever's in charge of that process went to the IT team. The IT team probably, took those requirements, built an application, sent it back to to maybe the business developer or the citizen developer, who's like a business user who's running the program. And there's a lot of information that can be lost in translation in terms of understanding customer needs. I think Lee touched on this as well in his presentation, where understanding what someone's trying to do and being able to do that is a lot easier when you yourself have that firsthand knowledge than having to explain it very clearly, hope the other person understands it and all the nuances that are maybe unexplainable or you kind of just take for granted, and then going back and forth. So the closer the solution builder is to the actual problem, generally the better the solution being built is, because you have a lot of firsthand knowledge that may or may not be translated through some requirements document or something like that. So to wrap it up real quick, we have a developer program. And with this developer program, I'm going to breeze through these really quickly because I think Andrew touched on a lot of it. Ultimately, there's kind of three different markets: the low-code market, like I've talked about, serverless for more professional users, and then for freelancers as well. But ultimately, the market's booming. So, studies have shown basically that there's a 30%, year-over-year growth in this low-code market, which is pretty crazy by most software standards. And so the need for these kinds of tools is growing like crazy. But also, like all these tools, I flashed a bunch of features for you. It's going to take maybe a week of training, maybe 3-4 days if you're a little faster, to really understand all the nuances and features and functionalities of the platform. And so that's a really big leg up that somebody with these skills would have, because once you kind of learn it on one, you can kind of learn it in other ones as well. But it's a big market that has a lot of demand for building applications, and having a good grasp on these, I would say, concepts and even features and functionality can really make your life a lot easier building solutions for yourself or for your future employer, or going out and working for other clients and building things for them as well. On the flip side, serverless, for the more technical people who said they have built applications in the past, you guys probably already know this is also a booming market. Anything in development world is pretty much booming all over, just a little bit slower than the low-code market because it's been around a little bit longer and it's matured. But ultimately, serverless architecture is kind of the de facto standard, especially at larger organizations who are modernizing a lot of their legacy platforms. And so really big market opportunity for serverless and development as well. And then last, for freelancers, being able to build something even on the side, if this isn't your main hustle or your main day-to-day job that you want to do, being able to have this kind of ability to create these apps that take maybe hours or days max to build, and you can charge people, a decent rate. What do you call, either hourly or not, maybe locally, maybe internationally, depending on the market and your understanding of things. But ultimately, it's a really great way to have a side business as well, or make it your main thing. And you earn a decent amount of coin doing it as well. And what do you call it? It's a really great way to kind of boost your resume and boost your just your technical abilities to make yourself more valuable in the workforce. And then if you go the freelance route, another option also is going to be deploying things to our marketplace, which is basically I mean, a marketplace you have kind of an idea for already, but it's an online store essentially that all of the Zoho customers can use, and they can pick applications for it. They can pick them for free. You can pay for them. You can do a subscription model, but ultimately you can build applications on this creator platform, for example, that are maybe even country specific or region specific for some specific use case. Maybe some unique way invoicing happens in South Africa, for example, may require a little custom app for digitizing invoices or something like that. And you can build that solution, throw it in the marketplace, and now you're basically the de facto solution for everybody in South Africa who uses Zoho and wants to leverage some, state regulation or country regulation in some regard. So the marketplace is a great way to get access to a lot of different customers. And really, you can build something, throw it out there, and if you get passive income, you get passive income, or not. Really, it can go either way. It can be a full-time thing, or it can be a completely side hustle. Doesn't really matter. And then lastly, naturally, with any developer program or developer area, we have a really big community. There's over 100,000 developers around the world that are building things on the Creator platform, millions of apps that have been built on the platform as well. And we do, we do different live sessions all the time, tips and trick sessions. There's a knowledge base and forums that people ask questions and best practices and all that kind of stuff. And then there's also a job board that people will post of, their requirements for, I need, an app that does X, Y, and Z. And you can, PM that person back and say, hey, look, I can do it. And this is what I'll probably cost you, because it's going to take this many hours to probably do. So the community is a great way to just learn more about the product and the platform, as well as, generate money from postings on that job board. And so after the event, I'm sure you guys will get an email with probably a lot of information about signing up. But ultimately, we're doing a hands-on training. The training itself is completely free. If you want a certification, that basically is just like a certificate that says you completed it and you passed the test. That's $100. But in terms of actually just getting the training, that's 100% free. So there's no downside to really getting the training and just learning. Worst case, you learn something new. And that's kind of it. Really, maybe we have some time for questions. Maybe I'll sling it back to Andrew. Let's see what happens here. I will probably stop the screen share. And here comes Andrew.
Okay, perfect. Tejas, thank you so much. Are you able to just hand over the training to me? You just go to the people tab and then go to trainers, and then you just give me control. Okay, perfect. All right, guys. So we're thank you, Tejas, for that. That was really insightful. I'm quickly gonna put on the last presentation that we have. Okay, yeah. So we can do the Q&A now. Let me just check the time. We've got another like 13 minutes. I can also announce the winner of the voucher. Which should I do first? The winner or questions? You guys can put it in the chat. Just put in winner or questions, and I'll decide what we're gonna do first. Okay, cool. I've seen a lot more winners than Q&A. Okay, cool. So let's just quickly go through the contest for the 10,000 Rand DigiCape voucher. Guys, DigiCape is it's an authorized Apple retailer, but they also can supply every other type of technology. So the person who does win this can request for them to order many different types of products and technology and hardware. All right. So what I did is the surveys that were submitted were integrated with Zoho Sheet, which is Zoho's version of Excel. What I did is I pulled all of the entries in. I then filtered the duplicates out. Some of you guys like to enter more than once. So I just filtered out those duplicates. I also filtered out the people that got wrong answers to the question. The question was, how many apps have Zoho created? It's more than 50 applications. And so what I did is I put it through. You'll see everyone is numbered from number 2 number 2 row, and this is just screenshots what I did of the columns, of the rows. So you'll see everyone, this is 23 to 44, 44 to 65, 65 to 86, and then we've got 86 to 107. So 107 people got it right. And so what I did is I went to a website, random.org, which is apparently one of the best websites for random number generation. I put in the minimum, which is number 2, the maximum, which is 107, and it pushed out number 33. So the person who was 33 is Wav, oh, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Wavudi Medlaudzi. So I hope I pronounced your name correctly. You are the winner of the 10,000 Rand DigiCape voucher. So congratulations. All right, so should we do maybe some questions? I know Keegan wants to say a few words. Let's maybe, Keegan, do you want to say a few words before we go to the questions?
Hi guys, I just wanted to say thank you to Zoho, Andrew, and the rest of the team. That was actually really, really insightful and amazing talk, and I wasn't aware of all the different opportunities, but I'm really glad that we got to hear from them. It's really exciting to kind of be getting into this, as I think Charles mentioned at the beginning, that they've just built an office in Cape Town. There's a lot of expansion, a lot of good things happening. And it's really great to see so many of you attending the event. And I really would encourage you to take full advantage of this, look into it, because as someone that I'm quite far into my studies and I have some working experience, I can promise adding things like this to your CV, it just boosts your opportunities to get jobs and just make yourself more marketable. So thank you again to Andrew. And if you have any questions, let's move on to that. But other than that, thanks everyone for joining. And again, thanks to Andrew and his team for organizing everything.
Perfect. Thank you, Keegan.